Click on the nightlight and get tucked into a comfortable spot. We're about to go on a journey to dreamland, and the best way to get there is by listening to a bedtime story. I'm your host, Nathaniel, and this is Sleepy Time Stories. Tonight's tale is a special version of the Enchanted Jug, also known as Why Dogs and Cats Don't Get Along. The tale originated in Korea, but was translated and brought to the Americas by Horace Newton Allen in 1889. The Enchanted Jug will take us to the east, to a mountaintop village. There we will meet two brothers, a cat and a dog. But before we go to that distant land, we'll need to check in on our favorite gnome. Picture yourself strolling through an enchanted forest. Little lanterns light your path. Up ahead, a gnome trudges along, pulling a cart behind him. You ask if you can tag along, and he begrudgingly says, "Fine, follow me." The forest is especially vibrant at night. The frogs croak, and the crickets rub their legs together. Iridescent fairy dust drifts down from the trees. Soon you come upon a clearing. A small fire burns in the middle with feathers and hay strewn around it like a bed. You lie down. The flames feel warm on your entire body from your head to your toes. The gnome notices how comfortable you are and decides to join you. He's tired as well. He's been pushing that cart for oh so very long. He can't help but open his mouth and yawn. You both close your eyes, and the gnome expresses how nice it would be to hear a bedtime story. The Enchanted Jug. Once upon a time, an old man lived in a village on the top of a mountain. He kept a little wine shop. Even though the place was hardly larger than a broom closet, it had quite a good reputation with the locals. The old man would permit no quarreling on his premise, and he only sold quality wine. Besides drinks, he also kept a pot of broth simmering over coals at his door. The scent of the soup tempted passerbyers on cold winter nights. However, not everyone appreciated the wine shop. The local seamstress often said she thought there was something peculiar about it. The blacksmith agreed, saying, "Something fishy's going on over there." His father, the miner, added, "I'm sure that old man's up to no good." Indeed, there was something odd about the wine shop. No matter how many people came by asking to fill their long-necked bottles, the old man never turned anyone away. To make matters even more suspicious, no one ever saw the old man receiving any new supplies from traders. In fact, he seemed to have been pouring an endless supply of wine from the same old jug for years. Its slender neck appeared black and shiny, and on its clay belly a symbol of good fortune had been painted. Any of his customers would recognize the jug as soon as the old man trotted out with it from the back. Every once in a while, when a traveler came to town, there would be a fresh set of inquiries as to the nature of the old man and his wine shop, and many folks would raise an eyebrow and say, "Yes, that is rather strange." But after a quick sip of the old man's wine, the questions would die out, and the only query folks would have would be, "Why doesn't the old geezer build a bigger wine shop?" And this would usually turn into a song. "Build us a new wine shop, up on the old mountain top." The old man had no children, but he had two companions which he thought of as his kids. Harvey, a good-natured dog, might not have been the smartest of canines, but he made up for it with loyalty and affection. As soon as the old man strolled in the door, Harvey wouldn't back down until he had licked the old man's ear and both of his elbows. The dog's only downside was that many fleas used him as a home. In fact, more vermin used Harvey's fur as a hotel than in the entire island of Fleetopia, which is an area very close to another island called Tiktopia. As you might have guessed, the old man's other pet was a cat named Thomas. Unlike Harvey, Thomas had read many a book in his day and was by far one of the most intelligent creatures on the mountaintop. His dry sense of humor often went over the dog's head, and he had a strong love of popcorn, whether popped or unpopped. The grain worked like catnip on his senses. Even though their personalities widely differed, they were the best of friends. They had grown up together and had always treated each other as brothers. Like most siblings, there was a bit of practical joking between them. While Harvey would nap in the afternoon, Thomas liked to set up the wine shop to appear like a crime scene. He would crumble tiny bits of cheese from the larder to Harvey's nose, and then he would get up on the counter and drop a dead mouse on Harvey's paw. The dog would wake in a jolt and yell, "Look, look, my paw did it again. It stopped that thieving mouse from stealing our cheese." Thomas found this hilarious and would laugh so hard that he'd start coughing. Not only was it good humor, but a great excuse to why the cheese was always missing from the larder. And so the feline and canine brothers lived happily with the old man. In the summer there was nowhere cooler than the stone floor. In the winter, he let them sleep with him on his warm kang bed. When the old man would go out on a mild moonlit night to gaze at the stars, his companions would rush out and announce to the world that they were not asleep, but ready to encounter any and everything that the darkness might bring forth. The old man would stroke Thomas's little ears and pat Harvey on the head while thinking, "These two have no idea what it's like to be poor." Many years ago, before the old man had brought Harvey and Thomas home, he had lived as a beggar. A bowl of rice had been a luxury back then, and coals for the fire were practically unheard of. When the old man would think back to those cold, lonely nights, he would shudder. He didn't have the beautiful garments he now wore. Instead, he dressed in dirty rags. His hair wasn't long and brushed, but unkempt and tangled. His appearance was so different that the townsfolk didn't realize that the successful wine shop owner was once the beggar who lived on their streets. Back then, the old man was a bit of a drunk. He enjoyed sitting on a stoop, sipping on his wine jug, and singing songs.
"Give me another flask of wine so I can have a good time."
One such evening, a weary traveler came to town. He didn't look like anyone from those parts. His skin was of the pale sort, and his eyes sparkled light blue. As dusk settled in, he knocked on the first door he came to. The soft voice of the seamstress said, "What business do you have with me, the seamstress?" The traveler was so thirsty he could barely speak, but he managed to say, "I've been walking these hills all day long. Please, do you have a little something to wet my tongue?" "This isn't a saloon," yelled the seamstress. "Get on your way." The traveler made his way to the second door and gave it a knock. A voice barked back, "What business do you have with me, the blacksmith?" The traveler, now even thirstier than before, managed to say, "I've been walking these hills all day long. Please, do you have a little something to wet my tongue?" "This isn't a saloon," yelled the blacksmith. "Get on your way." And so the traveler marched up the hill and knocked on the third door. The gruff voice of the miner said, "What business do you have with me, the miner?" The traveler's mouth was even drier than before, but he managed to say, "I've been walking these hills all day long. Please, please, sir, do you have a little something to wet my tongue?" "This isn't a saloon," yelled the miner. "Get on your way." As darkness fell over the village, the traveler marched on, determined to find some way of quenching his thirst. But after only a few more steps, he fell on the ground, exhausted. The old man had been sitting on the stoop nearby. Seeing that the traveler had fainted, he came over, lifted the traveler's head, and poured a bit of wine in his mouth. The traveler instantly sat up. "Thank you, kind sir," he said. "I'm sorry for the taste," the old man said. "I don't have the coins for better wine." "Do you mind if I have another drink?" the traveler asked. "Drink as much as you like," the old man told him. And so they sat on the stoop, sharing the old man's jug of cheap wine. And before long, the traveler and the old man started singing songs.
"Let's forget all of our sorrow, we'll drink and drink until tomorrow."
As they finished off the jug, the old man told the traveler his story. "When I was a young man, I used to herd sheep. I'd go up on the hill right over yonder with my band. They'd spend all day eating the greenest grass you've ever seen. After a while, I decided I should find myself a wife, so I asked the local seamstress to marry me. She said, 'Yes, I'll marry you.' But only a week later, I found she had told the same thing to the blacksmith. And so I went to the blacksmith's house, and I brought this to his attention. 'You are just a lowly sheep herder,' he said. 'Why would the most beautiful girl in the village marry you when she could marry me, a wealthy blacksmith?' Before the moon had waned, the seamstress married the blacksmith. To hide my sorrow, I took to drinking wine all day and all night. That's a very sad story, the traveler said. You deserve to never run out of wine, and as a token of my gratitude, I would like to make it so you never do. With that, the traveler took the empty jug and dropped a piece of enchanted amber inside. As long as my amber's in there, you'll never want for drink. The jug will automatically fill with the most delicious wine every time you empty it. The traveler held out the jug, and the old man took it and drank what he could only describe as the most delicious stream of nectar he'd ever had the chance to taste. He turned to thank the traveler, but when he looked to his left, he discovered he was all alone. The traveler had vanished. Sitting there, the old man thought to himself, now that I have an endless supply of wine, I can do one of two things. I can stay drunk all the time, or I can use this newfound fortune to better my situation. As you might have guessed, the next day he opened his little wine shop and started serving his first customers. And before long, he had enough money to purchase some fine clothes. And about a year later, he brought home his new friends, Thomas and Harvey. To make sure they always had wine and wealth, he told his companions the secret of the amber. The three of them always kept a watchful eye on the jug of wine. Of course, with all the shenanigans going on around the house, those eyes started to wander. The old man spent most of his time parading around the village so everyone could see his brand new jade bracelet. Thomas had gotten into drawing treasure maps, which he would give to Harvey, who thought they were real. And when Harvey wasn't digging for fake treasure, he was lying on the cool stone tile, snoozing. Finally, on a rainy day in May, the old man went to grab the enchanted jug from its shelf and realized something was amiss. It felt empty. He tried to peer inside, but the jug was stained black and he couldn't see anything. He brought the jug over to the table and turned it upside down. Nothing came out, neither drop of wine nor piece of amber. News traveled fast around the town. The miner told his daughter, the seamstress, and she told her husband, the blacksmith, and they each shrugged as if the loss of wine was no big deal to them. But then, when the others were not looking, they each ran down to the old man's shop to see for themselves if it was true. On the little mud wall that stood in front of the old man's shop was written, "No wine today." The old man and the dog spent most of the following week moping around the shop and lying in bed staring at the ceiling. Thomas took things slightly different. He took to pacing the corridor in front of the shop, his whiskers twitching with thought, and every once in a while he would adjust his spectacles as if he was solving a great puzzle. After 7 days of pacing, he burst into the house and yelled, "I have a plan!" The old man had already gone to bed, so Thomas sat down at the table with Harvey. By now it is common knowledge that the amber fell out of the jug when the last bit of wine was being poured into a customer's cup. Thomas smoothed out his whiskers as he spoke. Somewhere in our village, or in one of the towns nearby, a customer has the amber in their possession. They are most likely unaware of the amber's qualities, otherwise they would have opened their own wine shop by now. Harvey rolled his eyes. Even with his limited brain capacity, he already knew everything Thomas was saying. "Now hold on," Thomas said. "I haven't gotten to the good part yet." Harvey breathed a sigh, but stayed at the table to hear more. "We can't very well stroll into every house and do a search. We're both too big. The owners would throw us out on sight. So instead of us exploring homes, we'll hire mice." "Mice?" Harvey asked. "They're perfect," Thomas said. "Small enough to get inside, but not strong enough to carry off our precious amber." "Well, you'll have to ask them," Harvey said. "I doubt they want anything to do with me and my paws." So that evening, after Harvey had taken himself outside on a walk, Thomas opened the attic and addressed the mice hiding inside. "I offer safe passage to the king of mice. May he come to the larder for a discussion of an alliance." Then Thomas skipped off to the larder, and before long the king of mice rode in, wearing his most regal royal robes. "Who are you to bother the king?" the mouse bellowed, holding up a silver scepter. "How would you like to be flea-free?" Thomas asked. No more itching and scratching while the summer sun bakes you in that upstairs attic. The king agreed. That would be nice. What do you need to make it so? Thomas explained that the fleas would move house for 1 year to Harvey's back, and all the mice had to do in exchange was search every single nearby home for a piece of amber. The offer is to my liking, the king said. But to search that many homes, we're going to need you to sweeten the deal. How so? Thomas asked. You and your dog friend will not hunt any mice in my kingdom for 1 year. Agreed, Thomas said. The mice sent out search parties that very night. While most of the time they went unnoticed, there were a couple of instances where they were chased out by the locals before they had a chance to search. In such cases, Thomas and Harvey were summoned as diplomats. They would call out to their feline or canine friends and try to get them to allow the mice inside. By the end of the week, they had investigated their entire mountaintop village. Thomas decided they needed to extend their hunt to the towns on the other side of the river. We need to conduct a thorough search before winter ends. Right now, the mice can easily cross over the frozen water, but in 2 months, the river will thaw. Time flew by, but they came no closer to success. The mice searched every home, barn, and shop, but each night they came back with no good news. Harvey and Thomas spent so much time across the river that the old man began to think they too had abandoned him, just like his customers. Soon it was nearing springtime when the river would flow once again. Thomas and Harvey knew they only had a couple of days before they would have to give up on their search. They decided their best bet was to go out to the shantytown by the abandoned mine. Luckily, when they reached the settlement, Harvey caught a whiff of an odor he was sure belonged to the amber. He scooped up 3 mice, tossed them on his back, and sped down the road. Soon they came to a ramshackle hut. The snores of a man echoed from inside. Harvey set the mice down and then sat at attention while they crept inside. After a time, the mice came out with good news and bad. The source of the odor was definitely coming from inside a soapstone box, but the bad news was that the box was locked. The next day, Thomas scurried over to the blacksmith's shop and gave a little tap on the window. It was widely known that the blacksmith's cat, Patches, could open everything from shackles to safes. Who's that tapping on my window? Patches asked. Come now, brother, Thomas said. You know me. Patches swung open the window and let Thomas in. I need to open a box, Thomas said. Patches scratched his chin. Knowing how to pick locks has really opened a lot of doors for me, but it's not something you learn overnight. It takes a while to unlock the secrets to success. Okay, Thomas said. Lockpicking can be very rewarding, Patches continued, especially when you find something valuable inside. Thomas stamped his foot. Are you going to help us out or not? What's in it for me? Patches inquired. Let's curl up by the fire, and I'll tell you. And so Patches threw a new log on the hearth, while Thomas told him his proposition. The blacksmith used to enjoy a bit of wine, no? At least 1 flask every evening. And now that the wine shop is closed down, I believe the blacksmith's mood has changed. You could say that again. Without his wine, he doesn't want to chat with me late into the night or sing songs, and he thinks I can survive on 1 little bowl of porridge. No more steamed dumplings for you, Thomas said. No more dumplings for me, Patches echoed. If you teach me how to pick locks and lend me your tools, I promise we will reopen the wine shop. It's a deal, Patches said, and they shook on it. For the rest of the afternoon, Patches taught Thomas the art of opening what is not yours. And when they had finished, Thomas took off into the night, and Patches pat his belly, thinking of all the dumplings he would soon have. That night, Harvey kept watch in front of the ramshackle hut, while Thomas crept inside. The owner of the hut lay under a thin blanket. His snores regularly shot out of his nose like a trumpet. Thomas spied the soapstone box, high up on a shelf. It was far too large for him to carry, but if he could put his lock-picking skills into practice, maybe its contents could be his. For the rest of the night, he tried every lock-picking technique Patches had shown him, all to no avail. You need more practice picking locks, Harvey said. Let's come back and try again tomorrow. They started on their way home. But as they approached the river, they saw that the water had broken free and large chunks of ice now flowed down the mountain. It was far too dangerous to cross, but hiking all the way around to their village would take days. If they wanted to try unlocking the box again, their only choice was to camp out on this side of the river. Luckily, the ice melting meant it was springtime. The days were warm and the living easy. One night turned into 2, which turned into several weeks, and during that time they made a few friends and a few enemies. Harvey fell in love, and then out of love, Thomas met a stag beetle who was doing some interesting things with gunpowder, but those are all stories for another time and place. One warm night, Thomas worked his lockpick into the metal fastener of the soapstone box. To his surprise, presto, it opened. He stood there in disbelief. For 3 weeks he had been trying, and he had started to think he'd never get the box unlocked. With a flick of his wrist, the lid fell back, and there inside was the piece of amber. It glowed in the moonlight, and Thomas swore he could hear it humming. He grabbed the gem and slunk out of the hut and into the night. When Thomas found Harvey and showed him the amber, he jumped about and howled at the moon. "We can go home," Harvey said. He was sure the old man would be very proud of them both. But as they approached the rushing river, their chins sank. They had completely forgotten the waterway was in their way. "Jump on my back," Harvey said. "I'll ferry us across." Thomas glanced up and then down the river. The rapids looked treacherous. They could easily get bashed against any number of rocks. "I'm a strong swimmer," Harvey insisted. So they came up with a strategy where Harvey would keep the amber in his mouth while Thomas clung to his back. At first, everything went smooth. Harvey swam out while Thomas called out the obstacles in their way. "Sharp rock, whirlpool, giant salmon." But about halfway across, fatigue set in, and Harvey started to sink under the water. In an attempt to spur Harvey on, Thomas dug his claws into the dog's back, but this only made Harvey lurch towards the surface and shriek, and when he did, the amber fell out of his mouth, and the current caught it and pulled it downstream. With a lot more dog paddling and thrashing about, Thomas and Harvey somehow made it to shore, but neither was very happy. Their precious amber lay at the bottom of the river. They both blamed each other for their misfortune. In a blur of anger, Harvey rushed at his best friend Thomas and bit him on the tail. Thomas didn't wait for a second go. He rushed up the nearest tree and hid in the branches. And for the rest of the day, Harvey could be seen running in circles around the tree, barking, while Thomas lay in the branches, drying his wet coat. The ruckus was so loud that it brought the old man out. He was a shadow of his former self. He hobbled over with the help of a cane. His fine clothes had been reduced to rags. His hair stood on end from the dirt caked in it. "You two," he shouted at them, "stop with all this noise and get inside." For the sake of the old man, Thomas and Harvey stopped their quarreling, but as you might have guessed, neither dog nor cat ever became friends again. Harvey never forgot the sting of Thomas's claws, and Thomas always remembered Harvey barking at him while he hid in the tree. They had a silent agreement. Harvey could have the cool floor, and Thomas owned the high shelves and rafters. Autumn came, and the leaves changed colors. The old man had taken up fishing, so the three never went without a good meal. Thomas had gotten into mathematics and was scrawling long theorems across the ceiling beams. But Harvey never gave up on finding the amber. Each morning, after a nice, fishy breakfast, he'd go off to the river and spend all day diving down in search of their gem. But as luck would have it, things were about to change. On a particularly warm day, the old man cast his net, and when he pulled it in, he found he'd caught an overly large salmon. Immediately, Harvey came running up to the dock. Even from down the river, he could smell the amber's strange odor. He started barking and running in circles around the fish, and he didn't stop until Thomas came out with a knife and split the fish open. There it was, the amber the three had been searching for. The dog jumped up on the old man, licking his ears and elbows, while Thomas brushed his tail against the old man's legs with affection. The old man scooped up the amber and held it in his palm. Indeed, it did sound like it was humming. "We don't need this anymore," the old man said. "I have everything I could ever want, right here." He patted Harvey on the head and stroked Thomas's little ears. Then, with all his strength, he threw the amber into the river. It splashed and then disappeared under the water, and no one has seen it since. The end. And good night. May the stars guide you to the dawn's light.